Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Election Day 2024 is officially underway. Millions of Americans across the country are heading to the polls to cast their ballots for the 47th president of the United States, as well as for members of the House and Senate and local ballot measures. Both candidates for president have already cast their ballots. Vice President Kamala Harris voted by mail, while former President Donald Trump opted to vote in person earlier today in Palm Beach, Florida. More than 84 million people across the country voted ahead of Election Day. That's more than half the number of people who voted in the 2020 presidential election overall. Vice President Harris is back in Washington, where she'll watch the results come in at Howard University, a historically black university in her alma mater. Last night, she wrapped up her campaign with a rally in Philadelphia. And former President Donald Trump is in Palm Beach, Florida, after making a late-night stop in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He'll watch the returns from Mar-a-Lago. This is the third time Trump has concluded his campaign in Grand Rapids. Last night, the candidates made their final pitches.
Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Because over the past 4 years, Americans have suffered one catastrophic failure, betrayal, and humiliation after another.
We are ready for a president who knows that the true measure of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but based on who you lift up. As president, I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to the challenges you face.
We have team coverage of the race for you. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is following the Harris campaign from Pennsylvania. But let's start with CBS News political reporter Jake Rosen, who's covering the Trump campaign. He's in West Palm Beach, Florida. Jake, how is the Trump campaign feeling about the way former President Trump closed out his campaign?
Thanks for having me, Lindsay. The Trump campaign feels good. They see these early voting numbers that you just mentioned as working in their favor, as overwhelmingly white, rural, and male, all three demographics that they believe will get them across the finish line in the Electoral College and in the critical battleground states that they've been targeting, although that is just a small piece of the puzzle down the stretch. And remember, while the closing argument for the Trump campaign has been the economy and bringing down inflation and immigration, and Donald Trump's promises on things like deportations, that message has gotten lost in the last couple of weeks. You saw last night him threatening to call Nancy Pelosi a derogatory word, the racist comments at Madison Square Garden, Trump over the weekend saying he wouldn't mind if journalists got shot if someone tried to take his life again. So it's a little bit of a muddled situation because of what Trump has actually said on the trail, but at least in what they believe that they've done down the stretch, they feel good about that.
What about the possibility of Trump making an address tonight? What are we learning about that?
Well, our colleagues at CBS News are reporting that it is possible that if the Trump campaign sees, especially on the East Coast, in states like Georgia, in states like Pennsylvania, in states like North Carolina, if they can get those states to break early for them, at least in terms of the early vote, that there's a way that they can potentially come out early and claim victory, even though we know that votes are going to be counted in these states for the next couple of days. We'll have to see, but we saw it back in 2020 when the race wasn't going exactly how they wanted, but Donald Trump thought that he had won, that he came out and spoke early in the morning right after election night. We'll see what happens tonight as votes officially come in and are tabulated.
But, Jake, that would be premature and that would be inaccurate.
Absolutely, and it would, and we have to frame again for our viewers that the way and the reason that these elections in some of these states take a long time is because these votes are being tabulated, cross-checked, triple-checked down the stretch here as every vote is tabulated. Every state tabulates their votes differently, and the states that are doing it in the way that they see as best. And again, we have to remind our viewers that although it is election day and people have been voting for weeks, that it might take more than that, and that the only reason of this delay is because things are being double-checked and triple-checked.
And we will have more on the methodology and how CBS News projects races. But, Jake, what does the Trump campaign feel is the former president's best path to 270?
The easiest path for the former president is what I just laid out. If they can convert on their economic message in states like Pennsylvania, especially in the western part of the state, they feel that if that state breaks for them, that they're in good hands. Donald Trump says that he expects to win North Carolina, a state he campaigned in a lot over the weekend from Friday into Saturday into Sunday. And we'll have to see how they feel about Georgia going down the stretch. in places like Atlanta and Fulton County, where the Trump campaign feels like if they can peel enough black male voters in some of the black belt in that state and in areas like Savannah and Atlanta, if they can do that, they feel good about their chances in winning all three of those states, which would get them to 270 electoral votes before even the states on the West Coast are called.
Jake Rosen, thank you. Let's bring in Weijia Jiang now for more on the Harris campaign. Weijia, what is the Harris campaign saying today? How do they feel about the last day on the trail in Pennsylvania? And are they optimistic heading into tonight?
Well, the vice president is not on the trail. She is in Washington, D.C., surrounded by family, but volunteers are still here. In fact, a Harris campaign official tells me that before 11 o'clock this morning, Lindsay, 100,000 doors were knocked across the state of Pennsylvania, and volunteers will continue to do that to try to get out the vote, because especially in here, Philadelphia, the biggest city and the biggest battleground state, and in Pittsburgh, that is going to be a non-negotiable for Harris to pull this out, because the fewer people that turn out in the cities, the more she has to make up in the suburbs. And she's been going after plenty of those voters, too. But it really is, these big metropolitan areas that could make all the difference for her. And here in Philly, we've spoken to local election officials. We've also checked in with our teams across the state, and we're hearing the same thing, which is that it seems like turnout is going to be high. And it's not just Harris that's really looking at that, but, Trump's strategy has been to go to rural areas to look for low propensity voters, especially men who typically don't vote, who don't engage in elections, and going after them. So he is relying on those voters to turn out, many cases, for the first time, which is why we're watching those numbers so closely. But the campaign feels very good about where they are, Lindsay. Jake just sort of laid out Trump's closing message, and Harris's is the opposite, basically ending where she started, with a message of joy, a message of turning the page and looking to the future. And they really think that is resonating, especially in the past week and a half, when Trump's rhetoric has become sharper and darker. And from day one, Lindsay, the Harris team was frustrated because they said they thought that Americans had forgotten who Trump was, and they were working to remind people of his character, they say, of the things that he say, of his perspectives about democracy. And they believe in the past week and a half, especially since that controversial rally at Madison Square Garden, Harris campaign officials, sources tell me that, they think he has revealed himself much better than they ever could. And that's why they are feeling quite confident going into this election day.
Does the Harris campaign have a contingency plan if Trump prematurely claims victory?
Well, Harris herself has answered this question, and she said, yes, we do, because she says they have the resources, the expertise, and the team ready to handle that. She said they are preparing based on Trump's previous actions and behavior. In fact, it was in 2020 that he essentially launched his Stop the Steal campaign right here in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, and he has already expressed doubt about the integrity of the election in this state. And so to that end, Harris says that they have been talking about a contingency plan, obviously not going into detail, but she said that she is prepared and she is concerned as well, Lindsay.
Weijia Jiang, thank you.